You're meeting him tomorrow morning. Just finalize the wedding date. My father's voice was so cold, so detached, like he was closing a business deal instead of deciding my entire future. I stood frozen in our living room, hands trembling at my sides, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. This couldn't be real. This couldn't actually be happening to me. Dad, I love Liam, I whispered, barely able to form the words. My throat felt tight, constricted. This marriage, it's wrong. He turned toward me with such fury in his eyes that I instinctively took a step back. Your love? Do you have any idea what your selfishness will cost us? The Dawson family is our biggest client. Their son marrying you will cement our business relationship. If you refuse, they'll pull all their contracts. We'll lose everything. Do you want to destroy this family? I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Images of Liam flooded my mind. His laugh, the way his hand felt in mine. Those secret midnight meetings when the world belonged only to us. But now everything was crumbling, slipping through my fingers like sand. And the Dawson's son? What about? He's broken, my father cut me off sharply. Car accident, wheelchair bound. Lost his mind, from what I hear. But this is our ticket into their world, Elias. Money, power, respect. You just need to play your part. I'll handle the rest. Pain shot through my chest. So I was supposed to marry someone I'd never met? Someone who was just another piece on my father's chessboard. The next morning, standing in front of the Dawson mansion, felt like walking toward my own grave. The estate sprawled endlessly before me. Towering white columns, immaculate gardens stretching as far as I could see. But despite all its grandeur, the place felt cold, lifeless, like a beautiful tomb. A butler greeted me at the entrance. You must be Elias. Master Jasper has been expecting you. Jasper. I'd never heard that name before today. We walked through marble hallways until we reached a large room. The butler knocked once, then pushed the door open. Inside, someone sat in a wheelchair facing away from us, staring out a tall window. Morning sunlight caught in his dark hair, creating an almost ethereal glow. The room was eerily silent, except for the faint whisper of wind against glass. Jasper, the butler announced, your fiancé has arrived. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge us, just sat there like a statue carved from stone. I cleared my throat awkwardly. Hello, I'm Elias. Silence. The butler glanced at me sympathetically before leaving, abandoning me to the crushing quiet. I bit my lower lip and forced myself to take a step closer. Look, I know this is strange. I don't really understand what's happening either, but who sent you? His voice suddenly cut through the stillness, low, rough, but sharp enough to make me freeze mid-sentence. I hesitated. My father. Then he turned around, slowly, and when I finally saw his face, my breath caught in my throat. He wasn't broken. He was beautiful. Dark gray eyes that seemed to see straight through me, a sharp jawline, and an expression that held neither anger nor pain, just exhaustion. Like he'd grown tired of the entire world. So you were forced here too, he said, something almost like a smile touching his lips. Welcome to my prison, Elias. Looks like we're both trapped now. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could I possibly say? That I was sorry? That I didn't want this either? Would it even matter? Jasper turned his wheelchair back toward the window, effectively dismissing me. You can go. The wedding will happen whether we talk or not. But there's nothing to discuss, he said flatly. This is just paperwork. A contract between families. You don't need to pretend you care. His words stung more than I expected. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong. But was he? Wasn't this exactly what it was, a transaction dressed up as a marriage? I left the room feeling heavier than when I'd entered. As I walked back through those cold marble halls, I pulled out my phone and stared at Liam's last message. I'm waiting for you, please don't do this. But what choice did I have? My father made it clear, refuse and my family falls apart. Everything my parents built, everything my younger siblings depended on, would be destroyed. How could I be that selfish? That evening, lying in the guest room the Dawsons had prepared for me, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to Jasper's face, those exhausted gray eyes, that prison comment. He was trapped just like me, maybe even worse. because at least I could still walk away physically anyway. Around midnight, I heard something, faint but distinct. Music. Someone singing. Curious, I slipped out of bed and followed the sound downstairs through a side door and into the gardens. The voice grew clearer, soft, haunting, filled with a pain that seemed to echo my own. And there, beside a stone bench, stood Jasper. He was standing, not in his wheelchair, actually standing on his own 2 feet, guitar in his hands, singing a melody that broke my heart without me understanding a single word. I stood there transfixed, watching this person my father called broken pour his soul into music. He looked nothing like the cold, distant man from this morning. He looked alive. When the song ended, I couldn't help myself. I started clapping. Jasper spun around, eyes wide with shock that quickly morphed into anger. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't sleep," I said quickly, raising my hands in surrender. "I heard singing and just wait. You're standing. Your legs were." His expression shifted to something guarded, almost defensive. He set the guitar down carefully. "Yes, I can walk. A little. With physical therapy." "Then why does everyone think?" "'Cause when people believe you're broken, they don't expect anything from you," he interrupted, his voice hard. "No love. No effort. No life." He moved back toward his wheelchair. "And no betrayal." Before I could ask what he meant, he was already wheeling himself away, disappearing into the darkness of the mansion. I stood alone in the garden, his words echoing in my mind. Betrayal. Someone had hurt him badly enough that he'd rather let the world think he was helpless than risk being vulnerable again. And somehow, standing there under the stars, I realized something that terrified me. I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand this beautiful, damaged person who sang to the night like it was his only friend. Maybe we were both trapped. But maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to be alone in our cages. The first week in the Dawson mansion felt like living in a museum. Beautiful, pristine, and completely devoid of life. Jasper stayed in his room. Most days. I stayed in mine. We moved through the same spaces like ghosts, never quite intersecting. The only people I interacted with were the butler and Maria, a kind-faced maid who seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. Every night my phone lit up with messages from Liam. "Where are you? I'm worried sick. Just run away. We can figure this out together." But running meant destroying my family's livelihood. It meant watching my parents lose their business, seeing my siblings lose their future. How could I choose my happiness over theirs? So I didn't reply. I just stared at the messages until they blurred together. 3 nights after my arrival, insomnia drove me outside again. The mansion was suffocating with its silence, and I desperately needed air that didn't feel so heavy. That's when I heard it again. The guitar, the singing, that hauntingly beautiful voice. This time I knew where to look. I made my way to the garden, moving quietly through the shadows, and found him in the same spot. Standing again, guitar cradled like a precious thing, eyes closed as he sang. I didn't announce myself this time. I just listened, letting his voice wash over me. There was so much pain in it, but also something else, resilience. Maybe. Or defiance. Like he was singing just to prove he was still alive. When the final note faded, I stayed silent, not wanting to break the moment. But he knew I was there. "You make a habit of spying on people?" he asked without opening his eyes. "I make a habit of not being able to sleep," I countered, stepping into the moonlight. "Your singing helps." His eyes opened then, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You should go back inside." "Why?" "'Cause there's nothing for you out here. Seems like there's more out here than in that empty house," I said, gesturing toward the mansion. "At least out here, someone's actually living." Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe, or curiosity. He carefully lowered himself into his wheelchair, which I now understood was more prop than necessity. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly. "I know you pretend to be more broken than you are," I replied, taking a seat on the bench nearby. "I know you sing like you're trying to keep your soul from escaping. And I know someone hurt you badly enough that you'd rather hide than risk it happening again." Jasper's jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "His name was Nathan." I waited, sensing he needed silence more than questions. "We grew up together," he continued, his voice distant. "Best friends since we were kids. When we got older, It became more. He proposed 2 years ago. I thought we'd build a life together. He paused, fingers tracing the arm of his wheelchair. Then came the accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. I woke up in the hospital, unable to move my legs. My chest tightened, imagining the terror of that moment. Nathan visited every day at first. Jasper went on. Said he'd wait forever, that nothing could change how he felt. But when the doctors said I might never walk normally again, he laughed bitterly. 3 months. That's how long forever lasted. He said he couldn't handle a life of taking care of someone who was only half there. Anger flared hot in my stomach. He was the one who was only half there. You deserved better. Jasper looked at me sharply, as if surprised by my vehemence. You think so? Most people would agree with him. Who wants to be stuck with someone like this? Someone like what? I demanded. Someone who's working through trauma? Someone who's literally relearning how to walk. That's not being broken, Jasper. That's being human. He stared at me, and for the first time since we'd met, I saw something crack in his carefully constructed walls. Why do you care? You're only here because you have to be. Maybe, I admitted, but that doesn't mean I can't see you for who you actually are instead of what everyone says you are. Silence stretched between us, but it felt different now. Less hostile. More tentative. Like we were both testing the waters of something we didn't quite understand yet. What about you? Jasper asked finally. Why did your father really force this? So I told him. About Liam, about the love I thought would last forever. About how my father's business depended entirely on maintaining the Dawson family's favor, and how refusing this marriage would mean financial ruin for everyone I cared about. About feeling like I was drowning in obligations I never asked for. When I finished, Jasper was quiet for a long time. Then he wheeled closer and did something unexpected. He reached out and placed his hand over mine where it rested on the bench. We're both prisoners, he said softly. Different cages, same trap. Maybe, I agreed, looking down at his hand covering mine. The touch felt warm, grounding. But maybe prisoners can be friends. Make the cage a little less lonely. He withdrew his hand quickly, as if suddenly realizing what he'd done. But there was the ghost of a smile on his lips. Maybe. Over the next few days, things shifted in small, almost imperceptible ways. Jasper started appearing at breakfast. He'd mention a book he thought I might like when we passed in the library. Once he even made a dry comment about the terrible weather that made me laugh. Unexpectedly. We weren't close. We weren't anything, really. But we were becoming less like strangers. Then came the night the power went out during a storm. I was in the library searching for something to read when the lights suddenly died, plunging everything into darkness. Elias? Jasper's voice cut through the blackness, and there was an edge to it I hadn't heard before. I'm here, I called back, fumbling for my phone's flashlight. When I found him, his face looked pale in the harsh LED glow, hands gripping his wheelchair's arms so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Are you okay? I don't do well in the dark, he admitted, voice strained. The accident, it happened at night. Sometimes when it's dark, I'm back there, trapped in the car, unable to move, unable to see. Without thinking, I knelt beside his wheelchair and took his hand. You're not there. You're here. You're safe. His hand was shaking, but he didn't pull away. We sat like that in the darkness, my phone casting strange shadows on the walls, until the power finally flickered back on. When the lights returned, Jasper's grip on my hand loosened but didn't disappear entirely. He looked at me with something raw and unguarded in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Anytime, I said, and meant it. As I left the library that night, I realized something had fundamentally changed between us. We'd crossed some invisible line, moved from prisoners sharing a cage to something else entirely, something that felt dangerously close to connection. The morning after the storm, I walked into the dining room to find Jasper already seated at the table. It was the first time he'd been there before me. I tried not to show my surprise as I sat down and reached for the coffee pot. Maria mentioned you prefer coffee to tea, Jasper said casually, not looking up from his plate. Yeah, I replied, caught off guard. How did that come up? I asked. He finally glanced at me, something almost like amusement in his eyes. Seemed relevant information about someone I'm apparently married to. We're not married yet, I pointed out. but I couldn't help smiling. Semantics, he said, returning his attention to his breakfast, but I caught the corner of his mouth twitching upward. After that morning, our interactions increased. Not dramatically, Jasper wasn't suddenly open or talkative, but he stopped actively avoiding me. He'd be reading in the same room where I was working. He'd make quiet observations about the books I chose. Once he even asked my opinion on one of his architectural sketches. "You studied architecture?" I asked, surprised as I examined the detailed drawing of a building that looked both modern and classical. "Past tense," he said. "That was before. Now I just—" He gestured vaguely at the wheelchair. "Sketch sometimes. Doesn't mean anything. It means you still have the talent," I insisted, studying the careful lines and proportions. "These are incredible, Jasper. You could still do this professionally." "Sure," he said sarcastically. "Clients will definitely take me seriously rolling into meetings like this." "You could walk into meetings," I pointed out. "You're getting stronger every day with therapy." He went quiet, jaw working like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Finally, he just took the sketch back and wheeled away, leaving me wondering if I'd pushed too hard. But the next day, he left 3 more sketches on the library table where I usually sat. No note, no explanation. Just an offering. 2 weeks into living at the mansion, Maria pulled me aside one afternoon. "Master Jasper seems different lately," she said with a knowing smile. "Lighter, somehow. You're good for him." "I'm just here," I said uncomfortably. "That's more than anyone else has been," she replied gently. "After Nathan left, Master Jasper shut everyone out completely. But with you, he's trying. That matters." Her words stayed with me. Was he really changing, or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? That evening, I found myself drawn to the garden again. I'd started coming out here regularly, partly hoping to catch another impromptu concert, partly just to think. Jasper was there, as I'd hoped, guitar in hand. But this time when he saw me, he didn't stop playing. I settled onto the grass nearby, leaning back on my hands, and just listened. The song was different from the ones before, still melancholic, but with threads of something else woven through. Hope, maybe, or at least the memory of it. When he finished, instead of leaving immediately, he adjusted his position and started another song. This continued for 3 more pieces, each one revealing a different facet of emotion. Grief, anger, longing, and finally something that almost sounded like peace. "You write all of these?" I asked when he finally set the guitar aside. "Most of them. Some are covers, but yeah, the ones that sound like bleeding hearts set to music. Those are mine. They're beautiful," I said honestly. "Painful but beautiful. That's life, isn't it?" He looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. Beautiful and painful all mixed together until you can't tell which is which. "Heavy philosophy for a garden conversation," I teased lightly. "Says the guy who got poetic about my sketches earlier." He shot back, and there was actual warmth in his voice. We fell into comfortable silence, both gazing upward. The night air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. "Can I ask you something?" Jasper's voice broke the quiet. "Sure. Do you still love him?" "Liam?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it seriously before answering. "I don't know anymore. I thought I did. But being here, away from everything, it's like I can finally see things clearly. What we had was real, but it was also easy. Safe. We never had to fight for it or sacrifice anything. This," I gestured at the mansion, at him, at everything. "This is complicated and messy, and I didn't choose it, but it's also making me question everything I thought I knew about myself." "That's not an answer," Jasper observed. "No," I agreed. "It's not. Because I honestly don't know. But I know the feeling is fading. Every day it gets a little quieter, a little less urgent. And that scares me because if I'm not holding on to Liam, then what am I doing here? What's the point of all this?" Jasper wheeled closer until he was directly beside where I sat. "Maybe the point isn't about him at all. Maybe you're here to figure out who you are without anyone else defining it for you." "And who are you here to be?" I asked, turning to look up at him. "Still figuring that out," he admitted. "But for the first time in 2 years, I actually want to figure it out." "That's new." Something passed between us in that moment. Understanding, connection, a recognition of shared struggle. It felt significant. like we were standing on the edge of something neither of us fully understood yet. I should go in, Jasper said eventually, though he made no move to leave. It's getting late. Yeah, I agreed, not moving either. We stayed like that for another 10 minutes, neither of us willing to break whatever spell had been cast over the garden. Finally Jasper did wheel away, but he paused at the path's entrance. Elias? Yeah? Thanks for listening. To the music? To all of it. It helped. Any time, I said, echoing my words from the library. After he left, I remained in the garden, processing everything. Something was definitely growing between us. I couldn't deny it anymore. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something. Friendship, maybe, or the foundation of it. And that terrified me because I hadn't come here looking for connection. I'd come resigned to loneliness, to going through the motions of a fake marriage while mourning what I'd lost. But Jasper was making that impossible. He was too real, too present, too genuinely himself beneath all the walls he'd built. And somehow, without meaning to, I was starting to care about him, not as an obligation or a duty, but as a person I genuinely wanted to know. As I finally headed back inside, I pulled out my phone and looked at Liam's latest message. I'm not giving up on us. For the first time, instead of guilt or longing, I felt something else, uncertainty about what us even meant anymore. I didn't respond. I just pocketed the phone and went to bed, dreaming not of the past but of gray eyes and guitar strings and the possibility of something I couldn't quite name yet. Over the following weeks, Jasper and I fell into an unexpected rhythm that felt almost natural. Morning walks through the garden became our routine. Him in his wheelchair, me beside him talking about everything and nothing. Afternoons we'd watch old movies in the theater room, sometimes arguing about plot holes, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. Evenings brought long conversations on the terrace that often stretched until dawn painted the sky pink. I was learning him in layers. He'd been an architecture student before the accident, driven by dreams of designing buildings that would reshape skylines. The crash had stolen that future from him, or so he believed, but the sketches still scattered throughout the library told a different story. Detailed blueprints, intricate designs, pencil drawings that practically breathed with life and ambition. One afternoon, I found myself studying a particularly stunning sketch of what looked like a modern art museum. This is extraordinary, I said, tracing the clean lines with my finger. Past tense, he replied without looking up from his book. Those don't count for anything now. Stop doing that. I set the drawing down firmly. Stop dismissing your talent like it has an expiration date. Who's going to hire someone who can barely stand? His voice was flat, matter of fact, like he'd already accepted this as unchangeable truth. I would, I said, meeting his eyes directly. If I needed an architect, you'd be my first choice. This work speaks for itself, Jasper. He went quiet, and for a moment I thought I'd overstepped. Then something shifted in his expression, walls lowering just slightly, vulnerability peeking through. You really believe that? He asked softly. I wouldn't say it otherwise. A smile appeared then, small and tentative, but undeniably real. And seeing it did something to my chest, made something tighten and warm simultaneously in a way I couldn't quite name or understand. Later that night, I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, staring at Liam's latest message. I miss you. Please come back. The words should have hurt, should have made me ache with longing. Instead, I just felt distant from them, like reading lines from someone else's story. The guilt remained, but the pull had faded to almost nothing. Thinking about him, I jerked upright to find Jasper standing in my doorway. Actually standing, supported by crutches, but standing nonetheless. When did you start using those? Physical therapy's been going well, he said, moving into the room with careful steps. But that's not what I asked. I set my phone aside. Yeah, I was. But it's different now. The feeling isn't the same. What changed? I hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option. Maybe I did. Maybe being here, being away from everything familiar, showed me what I was holding on to wasn't as solid as I thought. Jasper lowered himself to sit on the edge of my bed, setting the crutches aside. Or maybe you're just adapting, making the best of a bad situation. Is that what you think this is? I asked, genuinely curious. Us spending time together, is that just adaptation? He studied me for a long moment. I don't know what this is, he admitted. but it doesn't feel like just surviving anymore. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. I could feel my pulse in my throat. What does it feel like? I pressed. Like maybe I'm not as alone as I thought I was, he said quietly. Like maybe neither of us are. Before I could second guess myself, I reached out and took his hand. He tensed initially, then his fingers curled around mine, holding tight. We're not, I confirmed. Alone, I mean. He looked at our joined hands, then back at my face. Elias, you should know that this started as a business arrangement. I interrupted. I know. I've always known. But what's happening between us now? That's not business. That's something else entirely. What if you're wrong? His voice carried an edge of desperation. What if you're just confused because you're trapped here with me? Then ask me. I shifted closer. Ask me what I want right now. In this moment. What do you want? This. I said simply. You. Whatever this thing is between us that we're both too scared to name. Jasper's breath hitched. His free hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing against my skin with devastating gentleness. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back to polite strangers. Good, I whispered. I don't want to go back. He closed the distance between us slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. When his lips finally touched mine, it was tentative, questioning, almost reverent. I answered by leaning into him, deepening the connection, pouring everything I couldn't articulate into the kiss. For a heartbeat, he remained still. Then something broke loose in him and he pulled me closer, the kiss transforming into something urgent and raw and achingly real. His hands tangled in my hair, mine gripped his shirt, and we both poured years of loneliness and hurt and desperate hope into that single point of contact. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. This is terrifying, he admitted. Completely, I agreed. Want to do it anyway? His laugh was shaky but genuine. Yeah, I really do. That night marked a turning point. We didn't rush into anything physical beyond that kiss, but something fundamental had shifted. The walls between us came down, replaced by a tentative openness that felt both thrilling and fragile. We were no longer prisoners tolerating each other's company. We were something new, something undefined, something that made my heart race every time he smiled at me. And for the first time since my father had sold my future, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost everything. Maybe I'd found something I didn't even know I'd been missing. The weeks following our first kiss were the happiest I could remember. Jasper and I existed in our own bubble, the mansion becoming less a prison and more a sanctuary. We'd wake up early to watch sunrises from the terrace. His head on my shoulder, my fingers tracing idle patterns on his arm. I started cooking meals for us. Nothing fancy, but he ate everything I made like it was gourmet cuisine. In return, he taught me about architecture, showing me how to see the bones and beauty in building design. This physical therapy was progressing remarkably. The wheelchair appeared less frequently now, replaced by crutches and sometimes just a cane. His doctors were amazed by his improvement, attributing it to renewed motivation. This is because of you, he told me one morning as we sat in the garden, watching butterflies dance between flowers. Your recovery is your own achievement, I corrected gently. But you gave me a reason to fight for it, he insisted, lacing his fingers through mine. Before you, I'd accepted being stuck. You made me want more, want better, want a future. I pulled him into an embrace, holding him tightly against my chest. Everything felt so perfect, so right, that I was almost afraid to breathe too deeply in case it all shattered. As it turned out, my fear wasn't unfounded. Marcus arrived on a Tuesday without warning, striding into the mansion like he owned it, which technically his family did. He was everything Jasper wasn't. Loud, abrasive, radiating the kind of aggressive confidence that came from never being told no. I was coming down the stairs when I heard him in the foyer. Where's my dear brother? His voice dripped with sarcasm. Still playing house with his little charity project? Ice flooded my veins. I continued down, forcing my expression to remain neutral. Marcus spotted me and smiled, the expression of a predator sizing up prey. Ah, there you are. The convenient solution to our family's business problems. Marcus. Jasper appeared from the library, moving quickly despite his cane. You need to leave. Now. Oh, don't be dramatic. I just came to see how the happy couple is doing. He looked between us with obvious disdain. Though I suppose couple is a generous term for a contractual obligation. Elias is my partner, Jasper said firmly. Show some respect. Partner. Marcus laughed harshly. Come on, little brother. This whole thing was a business deal from the start. Dad paid off their family's debts. This is just paperwork with a fancy ceremony attached. The words hit like physical blows. I'd known the truth, of course, but hearing it spoken so casually, so cruelly, made it feel more real and more painful. Get out of my house, Jasper said, voice shaking with fury. Right now. Marcus shrugged. Just thought your partner should know what he really is to this family. A means to an end. Nothing personal, Elias. Just business. He left whistling, completely unconcerned by the bomb he'd just detonated. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Jasper wouldn't look at me, his jaw clenched so tight I worried he'd crack a tooth. We should talk, I said quietly. What is there to say? His voice was hollow. He's right. This started as a transaction. Your family needed money. Mine needed business security. We were just the pieces moved around the board. And what we've built since then? I challenged. Was that part of the transaction too? No, he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. But maybe that makes it worse. Maybe keeping you here, letting this develop between us when you never had a real choice. Maybe that makes me selfish. Don't do that. I moved closer despite his defensive posture. Don't use my circumstances as an excuse to push me away. I'm not pushing you away. I'm giving you an out. His hand trembled as he gripped his cane harder. You deserve someone who comes to you freely, not because their father sold them into a marriage. You want to know what I deserve? I asked, letting anger seep into my tone. I deserve to make my own decisions, and I'm deciding that what we have matters more than how it started. Elias. No. Listen to me. I grabbed his free hand. Liam is my past. He's moved on, and honestly, so have I. What I feel when I'm with you, that's real. That's present. That's what I'm choosing. He looked torn, vulnerable in a way that broke my heart. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his entire body went rigid. What is it? Nathan. He showed me the screen. He wants to see me. Says he made a mistake and wants to talk about reconciling. My stomach dropped. Are you going to meet him? I don't know, he said honestly. Part of me wants closure. Part of me is afraid of what seeing him again might do. Do you still love him? The question hurt to ask, but I needed to know. No, Jasper said immediately. What I felt for Nathan died when he walked away. But he was such a huge part of my life. And the way it ended, I never got to process that properly. Maybe seeing him would help me finally move on completely. I wanted to be selfless, to tell him to go get his closure. But fear made me selfish. And what if he wants you back? What if seeing him reminds you of who you were before the accident? Then I'd tell him I'm with someone else now. Jasper said, pulling me closer with surprising strength. Someone who saw me at my worst and didn't run. Someone who makes me want to be better. You, Elias. I'd choose you. That night, we lay together in his bed, not sleeping, just holding each other in the darkness. Both of us knew that the safety of our bubble had been compromised, that the outside world was pressing in with complications we couldn't ignore forever. Whatever happens, I whispered into the quiet. We face it together. Deal? Deal, he murmured back, pressing a kiss to my forehead. But as I lay there listening to his breathing even out, I couldn't shake the feeling that our hardest test was still coming. And I had no idea if what we'd built would be strong enough to survive it. Nathan showed up 4 days later and he was everything I'd feared he'd be. Tall, polished, movie star handsome with the kind of easy charm that probably made people fall at his feet. When Jasper opened the door to him, I saw the flinch in his expression, not pain, exactly, but the ghost of it, a reminder of what had been and what had been lost. I started to leave, to give them privacy, but Jasper's hand shot out and grabbed mine. Stay, please, whatever he has to say, I want you to hear it. Nathan's eyes flickered to our joined hands, something unreadable crossing his face. So the rumors are true. You really did marry someone. This is Elias, Jasper said evenly. My husband. The words sent warmth flooding through me despite the tension crackling in the air. Right. Your arranged marriage. Nathan's smile was practiced, but his eyes were calculating. Can we talk privately? No, Jasper said flatly. Anything you need to say can be said here. Nathan sighed like we were being difficult. Fine. I'll cut to the chase. I made a mistake, Jasper. Walking away from you was the biggest regret of my life. I was scared, overwhelmed, but I've had time to grow. I'm ready now, ready to be the partner you deserved from the beginning. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the moment. The test. Jasper's hand tightened on mine, but his voice remained steady. I appreciate the apology, Nathan, but I've moved forward. What we had is finished. Because of him? Nathan gestured at me dismissively. Because of an arranged marriage? Come on, Jasper. You can't possibly have real feelings for someone you were forced to be with. Actually, I heard myself say, surprised by how calm I sounded, he can, and he does, just like I have real feelings for him. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and from the way Jasper's head whipped toward me, eyes wide with shock, he hadn't expected it. Nathan laughed, but there was bitterness underneath. This is insane. Do you even know the truth? Do you know that his family paid yours to make this happen? You're literally a purchased solution to a business problem. The words should have stung. Maybe they would have weeks ago. But now, after everything Jasper and I had built, they just felt hollow. I know exactly how this started, I said, and I don't care, because where we are now, what we've become, that has nothing to do with money or business deals. You're deluding yourself, Nathan pressed. Both of you are. This isn't real. It can't be. You're wrong, Jasper said, quietly, and there was steel in his voice now. What you and I had was real once, but you destroyed it. What Elias and I have now, that's real too. More real than anything I felt before, actually. Because he stayed when staying was hard. He saw me at my absolute lowest and didn't flinch. That's worth more than all the history you and I share. Nathan's expression hardened. You're making a huge mistake. No, Jasper replied. I already made my mistake, wasting years on someone who loved me conditionally. I won't make it twice. After Nathan left, the mansion felt eerily quiet. Jasper and I stood in the foyer, still holding hands, processing what had just happened. You meant what you said, Jasper finally spoke. About having feelings for me. Every word. I confirmed. I love you, Jasper. I don't know exactly when it happened or how, but somewhere between the garden concerts and the sunrise conversations and watching you fight to walk again, I fell in love with you. His eyes filled with tears. You can't. This whole situation is complicated and messy and started for all the wrong reasons, and turned into something beautiful anyway. I interrupted. That's how life works sometimes. We don't get to choose how things begin, but we can choose where they go. I love you too, he whispered, and hearing those words from him felt like coming home. You make me believe I'm not broken, that I never was. You make me want to build things again, dream again. You make me feel whole. I kissed him then, pouring every ounce of emotion into it. This kiss was different from our first, not tentative or questioning but certain. A promise, a commitment. When we broke apart, I noticed something. You're standing on your own. No cane. He glanced down as if surprised by his own body. I didn't even realize. I was so focused on you. That's progress, I said, smiling through tears I hadn't realized were falling. Because of you, he insisted. Everything good in my life right now is because of you. The next morning, Marcus returned, but his demeanor had shifted entirely. I owe you both an apology, he said, looking genuinely uncomfortable. I was out of line. I've spent some time thinking, and I can see that what you two have is genuine. I'm sorry for trying to diminish it. Jasper accepted the apology with grace, and slowly, carefully, our lives began to reshape themselves around our new reality. 6 months later, Jasper reopened his architecture practice. I was there for every milestone. The first client meeting, the first accepted proposal, the nerve-wracking presentation that landed him a major project. Watching him come alive again, seeing confidence and passion replace despair, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. The night of his first project launch, he found me in the crowd and pulled me onto the small stage. I need to say something, he announced to the gathered investors and journalists. This firm, this project, everything I've rebuilt, it exists because one person refused to see me as less than whole. Elias believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. He loved me when I thought I was unlovable. He's not just my husband. He's my foundation, my inspiration, my home. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it over the pounding of my own heart. Later, back at the mansion that had long since stopped feeling like a prison, Jasper led me to the garden where everything had begun. He picked up his guitar, he walked there himself, no assistance needed, and played a song I'd never heard before. It was about healing, about finding light in darkness, about love that mends instead of breaks. I wrote this for you, he said when the final note faded. For us. For everything we've become. I couldn't speak through my tears, so I just kissed him slow and deep, and full of promise. I thought my life was ending when I came here. I finally managed. Turns out it was just beginning. Mine too, he agreed, pulling me close. Mine too. Above us, stars scattered across the night sky like seeds of possibility. The marriage that began as a transaction had become a love story. The broken sun had healed, and I, the unwilling groom, had found exactly where I belonged. In his arms. In this garden. In this life we'd built from the ruins of what we'd both lost. Together. Always together.